Hello and welcome to Stuff You Should Know About Oil and Gas Production. This podcast is brought to you by Kimray. You can visit us at kimray.com to see our full slate of training materials, quick tips, and other resources. I am Curtis Winkle, and I'm here today with Kyle Andrews as usual, and then Director of Sales, Aaron Allen is. How are you, Aaron?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be with you guys.
Almost called you Allen. I'm sure you've gotten that.
That's happened at least 100 times since coming to Kimray. So
we've got Kyle surrounded, so I feel pretty like in a strong position there. So that's good.
Sure.
So Aaron, we had you on about a year ago-ish to talk about just kind of market overview, high level. What is the industry doing? What are some producer trends you're seeing? So we wanted to do that again. And we originally had that scheduled in February. A lot of things have happened since February, so we pushed that out a little bit. But I wondered if you just kind of take us through maybe high level, the things that the industry has experienced over the last, first quarter 22. And then we'll get into kind of maybe some of the things we talked about last year and how those are looking in 23.
Yeah, certainly. So interesting enough, I think this time last year or soon after, we were talking about negative oil. We were all trying to figure out how does that even happen, right? And then certainly we've seen the market rebound. We've certainly enjoyed the challenges that have come with that. Part of that's been people, having the right people at the right place at the right time, and just being empathetic to the new challenges that the market has. Some of those challenges with more robust pricing has been, ironically, it's been more capital available. That capital has been available to spend on initiatives directed toward ESG and becoming more environmentally friendly as an oil and gas producer. So that's been a challenge. Some of the upward momentum that's carried the market to this new environment has really been contributed to just a really tight supply and demand relationship. So we've seen global inventories, fall to multi-year lows. We've seen demand obviously rebound and at a much more aggressive level than previously anticipated due to the COVID-19 virus. So those are things that have been challenging, but we found comfort in those new challenges with this new environment. So $100 oil certainly plays a positive impact in our entire industry.
Yeah. So you mentioned inventory is low. So producers, are they drilling new wells, or a lot of that capital you said is going to kind of retrofitting current assets?
Right. So with the impact that COVID played, we saw a lot of our more prominent U.S. producers really stick to their fiscal commitment in not growing exponentially with the ebbs and the flows of the market. So what that may look like is year one, we're 5% growth, year two, we're 5% growth, year three, an additional 5% growth, regardless of the price or the volatility of oil. So in a market that maybe we didn't anticipate a year ago, where now they're seeing some record profits due to $100 plus oil, they're reallocating a lot of that free capital back to legacy production to get it up to snuff as it relates to ESG requirements, whether that's local, statewide, or federal.
Okay, so the extra capital that they're getting, they're not dedicating that to new wells, more drilling rigs. They're committed to keeping that consistent with their plans.
Consistency and stability in maintaining their cost structure has really been the fundamental key attribute that they have chosen to focus on. Now, some things that you may be wondering, like, well, how do they do that? When we see legacy production, as it falls off, naturally the revenue is going to fall off. They've been able to really mitigate some of that with a lot of the DUC inventory that they already had within their portfolio. So by converting that DUC inventory to new production, and they've already realized the cost of that in past years, it's really brought even more money to their bottom line with more resources available to dedicate to retrofit. And not only retrofit, but there's also a really intense focus on what does it mean once retrofit? What is the long-term stable plan and design that is ESG friendly? As we've all seen, the globe needs energy, right? And certainly forms of alternative are acceptable, but it's not the total transformation. Like, there's going to have to be some sort of substitute that provides that. And a lot of producers are looking at doing this in a green way. So
yeah, you want to talk about some of those ways? So last year we talked about 3 kind of key areas that we at Kimray have been thinking about helping producers produce well, efficiently, sustainably. So sand being a big issue with horizontal wells and fracturing, all the sand coming back. We're making more robust valves to deal with that. We talked about automation and some kind of efficiency gains there, and then emissions being the third kind of leg of that stool of like, since 2020, not only government regulations, but also investor concerns and some of those things. Is that still kind of the main 3 we're kind of thinking about?
certainly, I would probably add in there predictability. So with all those efficiency gains that we have now in extending the life of either a set of controls, a valve, a piece of production equipment, then the question becomes, okay, if not now, when? When does that fail? What is the point of failure? If I've taken care of this as a problem, what is my next mode of failure? So through a lot of different technologies that have come to the market and really been pushed to the forefront of the market in the last couple of years, we've gotten better about that. I just think of the different sensors, the different means of just inviting in new technologies that previously were unknown to be in oil and gas, especially on the upstream production side. That's been a breath of fresh air for the entire industry, and I think it shows the commitment that a lot of our U.S. Producers have in making sure that we're really socially and environmentally responsible as we move forward through the next decade.
A couple of things I want to pick up on there on what you said. So we just on the podcast recently have had 2 guys talking specifically about data and trends and predictability. So Jim and Brad is actually getting ready to be on, one in compression and one's a teacher, but teaching his students, petroleum engineering students, primarily about how to read analytics and what data can help them predict when equipment's going to fail. So that definitely seems like something at least up and coming.
Yeah, it's a hot topic for sure.
And then the emissions piece, Kyle, you've been out thinking about this, helping convert some of these valves from to non-vent. So you want to talk about some of those product additions we have?
Obviously going electric actuators or fully electric, a lot of the new locations that producers are drilling and setting up are all electric, and that fits right into with all this data analytics stuff. It's easier to monitor systems like that. They're all electric, and then non-vent conversions. We've done a couple videos on that, but using compressed air. A lot of producers are moving just to get away from pneumatics or using natural gas as a pneumatic source completely.
Are you seeing that, the compression?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we actually we've just recently worked with a compressor manufacturer in Kilgore on a lot of automation controls, and then obviously mitigating the risk of any kind of vent for greenhouse gases. So it's full circle. I mean, it's on the gas side. It's on the liquid control side. We're seeing that with just about every producer that has the capital available to move those initiatives.
Yep. And like you were saying with the retrofit, having that extra capital, now people are able to go back to legacy wells and say, okay, we have the capital to retrofit this with all electric actuators, or set an air compressor and do air for pneumatics instead of natural gas.
Yeah, one thing that's been really interesting through that process is the unrealized value at the start of that project. So what we've noticed is by going to remote monitoring or some form of automation, now instead of sending a technician a 100-mile round trip to monitor a well, they're doing it remotely. They're pulling that technician off the road, away from his family, her family, and then able to reallocate that resource to something that maybe would be more cost effective for them. So reducing the risk of any kind of health hazard, reducing the risk of downtime, and then knowing, like you were saying, immediately when something like that arises that's maybe not scheduled.
Yeah. And then also just developing those trends and knowing, being able to predict when something is going to fail. And, that helps preventative maintenance and keeping you up and running.
Curious so we've talked since 2020, obviously, but how your world has changed. I know in-person meetings are still not happening a ton, right? So your teams, have they adapted to kind of newer forms of communication, or what's that look like?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. So one thing that was a bit of a challenge for us is internally we like to use Microsoft Teams. And that's kind of the mode for any kind of remote training or remote meeting. But externally, we have many different platforms that we go to support. So that was one of the things early on that we did. We had to deploy training for Zoom, for Teams, for Cisco, for you name it. There was some sort of training required, right? And so that was a challenge because it's not something you use every day. As simple as understanding where the mute button is can be a big indicator on success of a meeting. But yeah, it was challenging. The team did well adapting. I think one thing that the industry realized, at least with our customers and the relationships that we have, was we're in this together. There wasn't any negligence on one side or the other of not maintaining relationships. It was like, how are we going to figure this out and make sure we prosper? So that was a bit of a challenge, but I would say there was probably a 2 to 3 month learning curve on most of that. And then it's like, okay, so this is here at least for the foreseeable future. Let's adapt. I will say recently though, it's been a bit refreshing. We just came off a sales training that was in person. That was really nice. And the stories I got to hear from the team was really centered, as far as customers go, centered around there's actually been a little bit less of remote meetings or Teams meetings. So people are seeing me in the parking lot now on the back of a tailgate, or I'm invited back to the safety meeting. So that's refreshing. I don't know that we'll ever get back to pre-20 levels, but hey, we'll take the gains on any face-to-face opportunity that we get.
Yeah. I think some of the remote work that's been happening has also given us an advantage in certain areas where, it almost feels like some people are more accessible now that they're just like, hey, just a click away from being not face-to-face, but seeing their face and maybe developing a relationship faster than it would be just over the phone.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was a bit more on the technical side with kind of somebody walking around with an iPad to visually show what normally we would have seen with just a quick trip. So it's been good. It's not certainly not the preference. We want to be there with you in person, but we've made that work.
Yeah. There's definitely been an improvement, like you were saying, on the function of the mute button.
Yeah.
I remember when we first went to remote work, and I was trying to provide some remote training, and we had probably 20, 30 people in this meeting, and it was just chaos. In the very beginning, nobody knew when to mute. Yeah. Everybody was awkward on camera, and now it's more of a normal thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So I know we want to talk about some of the things going on around the Permian in Texas. So Kimray has made an acquisition down there. And so can you talk a little bit about that? You said you were just in Kilgore with some of those stores.
Yeah, so 2021, at the end of Q4, we closed out an acquisition of Control Equipment. You guys know, but Control Equipment was our largest and longest tenured distributor. They went back to 1950. 5 store locations, about 45, 50 people. And by volume, naturally, with them taking care of the Permian Basin, they represented Kimray in a very large way. But at the end of that acquisition, I'm happy to say that we retained everybody that planned on coming on board. We had a couple of retirements, but overall, I would say that was a really big success for Kimray, and really showed our strength and partnership with our distributorship in Control Equipment. As far as customer impact, we're just more heavily rooted and invested in those areas at this point. There's been certainly a bit of change internally, but externally, I think that we've been much more aggressive with there's no lapse in communication. Let me check with Kimray. We are Kimray. So that's been a really big benefit. And with that change, onboarding 45 people on top of an already 40 plus established sales organization, naturally we had to adapt and we had to change a bit. So previous to the acquisition, we had a north and a south region. Our south regional manager is Clayton Trammell. And he really was responsible for our Kilgore store, our Corpus store, and our Houston store, along with the business development managers in that area. Jason Andrews was responsible for our distributorships, along with our Oklahoma City store and our PA store. So with the added personnel, we've added a West region. So Scott McNeely, who's a 25-plus year employee at Control Equipment, has accepted the role of our West regional manager, and he's got 5 stores, the 5 legacy Control Equipment stores beneath his responsibility. So we're super excited about that. We've seen, we're 5 months in off an acquisition, and we're probably 4 or 5 months ahead of where we thought we'd be as far as, culturally, and just with 2 different businesses coming together. It's been really exciting. It was a lot of work for a solid year, but we're reaping the benefits of that now with just a seamless customer experience.
Really excited about that team. Men and women who know their stuff, have been there for a long time. They're in the Permian serving customers. And so, like you said, I don't know what customers can expect other than good customer service, more Kimray.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny too. It's like, just interacting with Scott and with Carl, some of their longer term employees, some of the mottos, it's like, we don't let anybody answer the phone and talk to a customer until they've been here 5 years. And it's like, they're joking, but they're also, that's how serious they are to their customer commitment and that experience that you have. So, it's been really exciting to be a part of that.
Yeah. Kyle, anything else for Aaron while we got him?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Aaron, see you next year.
Yeah, we'll see you next year.
Thanks for coming on and sharing just kind of that high level perspective. We like to get into a lot of the details and training on this show, but it's good to hear too, just from a producer level, what's going on, what the trends are, and what we can maybe look forward to. So similar thing, just watching those emissions, trying to help people understand automation, the benefits of some of the analytics and predictability that they can have, and sounds like some good stuff on the horizon.
I would say, we've got some things that are cooking that are going to be certainly geared toward those goals that they have. I think we all share similar goals, whether that's the product you make or how you make it. We are certainly focused on that. So I look forward to, a little bit later this year, seeing the customer response to really listening to what initiatives they have. So thank you guys for having me on board.
Yeah, of course, man. All right, well, thanks for joining us. We'll have notes to some of the resources and things we mentioned in this episode's show notes, and we'll catch you next time on Stuff You Should Know About Oil and Gas Production.